we are going to continue with parameter changes. This time we're going to look at parameter changes of a quadratic function from function notation. So the way you know that it's in function notation is instead of seeing y equals, you are going to see f of x equals. Okay, so let's fill in these blanks. This should say f of x equals a, parentheses, x minus h squared plus k. Okay, so this a value, we already know a little bit about this a value. I know that a is going to tell me whether my parabola is going to open up or open down. And I know that when a is positive, my parabola is going to open up. When a is negative, my parabola is going to open down. Another thing that my a value tells me, and we've already seen this in one of the previous videos, is that it's going to tell me if it's a vertical stretch or a vertical compression. And it's going to be a vertical stretch if my a value, ignoring whether it's positive or negative, just looking at the number, if the a value is greater than 1. And if the a value, again, ignoring whether it's positive or negative, is in between 0 and 1, it's going to be a vertical compression. The next part of this equation is the h value. The h value tells me if it's going to have a horizontal shift. And so horizontal is just like the x-axis. So that's kind of helps you because the x is inside the parentheses with h. Horizontal means it's either moving to the left or it's moving to the right. And because this equation has a minus inside of it, we need to think opposite whenever we're doing horizontal shift. Okay, next is my k value. My k value is the number that is outside of the parentheses all the way in the back. And that number is my vertical shift. And so this number is going to tell me if it is up or down, if it's going to move up or if the parabola is going to move down. And we do not have to think opposite for this one because of the plus sign here. So let's go ahead and do the first problem. In the first problem, they're asking us for the front number and its effect first. So my equation says f of x equals 2, parentheses, x plus 4, parentheses squared, plus 3. In this case, my front number, or my a value, is 2. Because that 2 is positive, I know my parabola is going to open up. Now, 2 is greater than 1, so I'm going to have a vertical stretch. The next thing that it's asking me for is the number in the parentheses with x and its effect. The number inside the parentheses with x is my h value. Okay, so now remember I said we have to think opposite for this h value. If you look at my equation, The number that's inside the parentheses is 4. But remember, this minus in the original equation over here tells me to do opposite. So my h value is not going to be a positive 4. My h value will be a negative 4. And negative 4 is on the left side of the graph. So it's going to shift to the left. The next thing that it asks for is the k value, the back number. Okay, so I'm looking for the value of k. The value of k in this problem is a positive 3. Like I said, the positive means I'm going to keep the same number, so I have a positive 3. Positive is at the top, so I'm going to shift up. So now the last thing that I do is I'm going to sketch my graph. I'm not going to do point by point. I'm just going to make a sketch. So I'm going to start by plotting my vertex. I know that it's telling me that my h is negative 4, so I'm going to the left 4. The next thing it's telling me is I have to move up 3. So I'm shifting up 3, and I'm looking for the point that connects those two. That is my vertex. So my vertex is hk, which is just negative 4, comma 3. I know that from my a value, my parabola is going to open up, and it says it's going to be a vertical stretch. So I want you to imagine you have a rubber band and you're holding it from the top and the bottom because you're going to stretch it vertically. So you're stretching it to the top and to the bottom, and you'll notice that your rubber band is going to get really skinny. It's going to look like that. So that's what's going to happen to my parabola. I'm going to stretch it and it's going to look really skinny. Just like that. Okay, that's just a sketch. Let's do the next problem. F of x equals parentheses x minus 2 close parentheses squared plus 1. In this case, it looks like there is no a value. So we know that whenever we don't see a number in front of parentheses, there is an invisible 1. So that means that my a value is 1. It is positive, so it's going to open up. And the original a value for the parent function is 1. So when you're going from 1 to 1, it stays the same, so it's not going to stretch or compress. The next thing that I need to look for is my h value. Remember, the h value is inside the parentheses with x, and we have to think opposite. So it looks like it's a negative 2, but really my h value is a positive 2. And positive 2 is going to be on the right, so I'm going to shift to the right 2 units. The k value is the next one. That's that back number, and it's going to be a positive 1. Positive is at the top, so I'm going to shift up. Next, I'm going to sketch this parabola. So I know I have to shift to the right 2. I have to shift up 1, and that is my vertex. So my vertex is my h and my k, so it's 2, 1. It is going to open up, and it's not going to stretch or compress, so it's just going to look like a regular parent function parabola, except we change the vertex. Next, my a value in this next problem, f of x equals negative 3 parentheses x plus 5 close parentheses squared. My a value is that negative 3. Because it is negative, I know it's going to open down. And remember I said to ignore the negative and just look at the number. So that 3 tells me that it's going to have a vertical stretch because 3 is greater than 1. Next, I'm looking at the h value inside the parentheses, and we have to think opposite. It looks like it's a positive 5, but really it's going to be the h value is negative 5. Negative is on the left, so I'm going to shift to the left. And the last thing I'm looking at is the k value. It doesn't look like there's a k value. So when there is no k value, my k value is 0. I'm going to put plus 0. So it's not going to move. It's going to stay. So I know that I have to go to the left 5 units. And then I'm not moving up or down. I'm going to stay on that x-axis. So my vertex is negative 5, 0. I am going to open down with a vertical stretch, so it's going to look really skinny opening down. Remember, this is just a sketch. The next problem, f of x equals 4 parentheses x minus 1 close parentheses squared plus 2. My a value is a positive 4. Because it is positive, it's going to open up. And 4 is greater than 1, so I have a vertical stretch. The next thing is my h value inside the parentheses with x. Again, we think opposite. It looks like it's a negative 1, but really it's going to be a positive 1. Positive 1 is on the right, so we are going to shift to the right. And the last thing we're looking at is the k value outside the parentheses, which is a positive 2. Positive 2 is up, so I'm going to shift up. Now I sketch my graph. I'm going to sketch my parabola, 1 to the right, 2 to the top. There's my vertex. My vertex is at 1, 2. It is going to open up and it's a vertical stretch, so I need to make it look very skinny, very narrow. The last problem that I have says f of x equals negative 1/2 parentheses x plus 4 close parentheses squared plus 3. So in this case, my a value is negative 1/2. Because it is negative, it is going to open down. And because 1/2, ignoring the negative, 1/2 is between 0 and 1, this time I'm going to have a vertical compression. Okay, so this time, imagine that rubber band again. You're still holding it from the top and the bottom, but instead of stretching it, you're going to compress it. When you compress something, it looks flatter. So your rubber band this time is going to look like this. So that's kind of what's going to happen to my parabola, and you will see right now. Okay, it's going to look wider. Next, I have to identify my h value inside the parentheses. It looks like a plus 4, but we're doing the opposite, so it's negative 4. I know negative is on the left side, so I'm going to shift to the left. And the last thing here is my k value, which is that number outside the parentheses in the back. It's a positive 3, and I know that that is going to shift up. Now I know all of these examples shifted up except for the third one, but just keep in mind if it said minus a number, it would shift down. So now I'm going to sketch this parabola to the left 4 and up 3, making my vertex negative 4, 3. I need to open down and my parabola needs to be compressed. So instead of getting narrower, it is going to get wider. That is a vertical compression.